Welcome back to another episode of the Tech Talks Daily podcast. I'm your host, Neil C. Hughes, and today I've got a guest that ventures into an area that often lies beneath the surface, but it's crucial to the health and success of every startup ecosystem. Because today's guest is not your typical business consultant or tech entrepreneur. She is a startup psychologist and co-founder's therapist, and she's been making strides in the Israeli startup community. She established her clinic with the aim to support startup founders, CEOs and their teams emotionally and psychologically. And the outcomes have been nothing short of remarkable. What put her on my radar was the fact that a staggering 70% of her portfolio companies have successfully moved on to complete their next funding round. And this led to intensive research projects involving over 400 founders that delve into the psychology behind startup success and failure. And her work aims to break down the psychological barriers that hinder growth, improve performance, and even prevent founder burnout. Such an important range of topics for any startup founder or business leader listening. So buckle up and hold on tight as I beam your ears all the way to Israel, where today's guest is waiting to join us. So a massive warm welcome to the show. Can you tell everyone listening a little about who you are and what you do?
Thank you for having me, Neil. I am a startup psychologist and co-founder therapist. I'm working in the Israeli ecosystem mainly, but not only. I have in my portfolio startups from London, Dubai, US. And in my experience and education, I'm a psychologist, I'm a couple therapist, I'm certified as executive coach and group analyst. And I had started this, my own venture 7 years ago when I created a transition in my own career life. And I wanted to learn more about the startup ecosystem. And in order to do that, I felt, and still like an entrepreneur, that I need to understand the market. And I interviewed more than 400 founders on the underlying unconscious aspect, psychological and emotional aspect that support and sometimes become barrier to the founder and eventually to the startup success. And I've gained so much insights and understanding of what does it mean to be a founder. I established my own clinic, and today I'm working with founders, CEOs, founding teams, and founders and their spouse or loved one as a couple therapist, and helping co-founder to build healthy and trustworthy relationship, and helping founder to navigate through this very stressful and not easy journey with the hope and the fantasy that it will last and they will have it, at the end, what they wanted to gain, not only at the end point, but also through the process, which is even more important than the end point, which can be exit or closing of the start.
And I think there's so much to unpack there. What I especially love about your story is how you're helping leadership teams from all over the world. And despite that, I suspect that those leadership teams have so much in common. And I think it's more important than ever before to realise just how much we've all got in common at the moment. And I'm curious, what are the most common, let's say, psychological barriers that startup founders that are facing from the conversations that you're having? And how do those barriers often manifest in their professional decisions? Because I suspect you see a lot of patterns.
Yeah, I just want to start by saying that when I started my own business, many people, including founders, investors, VCs, thought that if the founders will have a psychologist or someone to support them, it means that they are not good enough.
Yeah.
And I have seen through the years that I have, people came to me feeling a bit shame and guilty, and they didn't feel okay to talk about it. And I'm very happy at the fact that we are talking here. It's a symbol and symbolizing that it became something that people understand, give the legitimacy and relate to it. So there is a huge difference between what happened when I started to today, and still way to go. I think that, there is a checklist of things that I've seen, and you can see it, cross-culturally and countries and region. There are very many personal stuff that founders need to handle and to face, and it's different a bit between male and female. And there are interpersonal aspects. So I can, give you the list, but at the end, what is super important is why it's happened to this specific person. So the why, driven from their personal life, their childhood experience, how they grew in their family, and all kinds of pattern and facing strategies and emotional triggers that that are coming again and again. So the why, this is the most important place where you need to touch. Many of the founders struggle with burnout and stress and the fear of failure. And what I see, I think that for the male founder, the startup is like a baby, and that you always need to handle carefully because it's so fragile, and this situation put everyone in a very stressful and survival. So you need to protect your baby not to go away. And many of the founders, especially the new ones, so it's their first time to be entrepreneur, finding it difficult to separate between who they are and the startup, their self-esteem, their identity as a person, as a female, as a woman, and all their experience in life and what they had to the startup. And when it's so attached and connected and linked, and there is no separation and you cannot distinguish, it even becomes more difficult to handle the fear of failure. And then people can become very careful about decision-making. They will postpone, they will delay, they won't take the tough decision. This is one side of the coin. And the other, they would be very spontaneous, impulsive. So not necessarily their decision will be, free from triggers and biases and really only about the business. Because it's so connected, their emotional life, their emotions, their feelings, their triggers to what's happening on the surface, which is finding product market fit, defining your strategy, pitching, raising money, etc. So the fear of failure and the burnout, all of that are really causing difficulty, at the end to perform. And because in my history, I was organizational psychologist, I understand very much the business of the startup and the entity and what it takes to build product market fit. So this is the uniqueness that I bring to, glasses with two perspectives. One is the psychological, emotional, and the second is the business. I think that many startups feeling loneliness, that no one understands them, including their spouse or partner at home. That, I don't know if you know, but founder 10 multiply 7 to get into divorce. Yeah. And as a couple therapist, I help many female or male founders to reconnect with their spouse, their partner, and find a secure attachment back again, because the startup is so demanding, and the person that, you're married to or live with, they don't understand. They don't understand what the startup means, and it's triggering vicious cycle between them. Many times it happened, it was existing in the past, but the startup life actually made it even, took it to the extreme. So I cannot say that startup is the cause, but it's really increasing the volume of issues in communication and in the dynamic between the couple that were there before, but it's really triggering. this is in the personal and life. In the interpersonal life, I've seen many founders that have a crisis or difficulty or tension with the co-founder. 65% of startup fail caused by dysfunctional co-founder relationship, and the ability to build relational awareness, not only personal, but also relational awareness, is something that, I teach and we practice and we talk with my patient, the startups in my portfolio, because your relational awareness can help you becoming a better manager, a leader with your management team, with your investor, managing the boardroom, so you can really understand the dynamic on the table and under the table. So you can really tackle these elephants, in a smart way where your emotions are regulated. So this is a big, family of things beside, the excitement of becoming a founder. Know that I'm going to achieve my goal and build something from nothing. And it means a lot. And, to feel complete when I'm really succeeding. So there are beautiful and amazing emotion and feelings tied to this journey. It's not only what I've mentioned, and we need to acknowledge it, but founders need to know how to manage all of those things and start their journey with their eyes open, where they understand the reality. It's not only sexy and lovely and, what we see in the social channel.
Yeah.
There is also underneath unconscious and conscious psychological elements.
So many powerful points in there, and a real eye-opener, especially for startup founders listening, I would imagine. And one of the things that I'd love to dig a little bit deeper on there is, can you elaborate on the concept of co-founder relationship psychology? I suspect it's something that not many people listening would have heard of, but again, so important. And can you also tell me a little bit more about the factors that might contribute to a healthy co-founder relationship? And are there any signs that should alarm people as well? Just for, again, any founders that could be listening to that.
Yeah. Thank you for that question, because there are not many couple therapists that transform their work to the startup ecosystem and really understand how to build healthy relationships, secure attachment, learn how to fight. Because many people, they are afraid from fight and conflict. And I say the opposite. Fights and conflicts are important. The question is how you manage your emotion and being able to be in the conflicts and get out of it and not ruin your relationship. And again, it's correct to any partner that you work so intensively in life. Sometimes it's investor, sometimes it's I think that there are several critical points that founders should be aware of before they choose their co-founder. The first one, what I called, is don't find the matching only by the professional resume, but look for the personal relational resume. So many founders are looking for a match. I'm a business person, you're CTO. Okay, it's a good match. Let's go for it. But you really need to have a honest and in-depth interview or dialogue with the people that are potential to work with you, and really understand who they are, where they come from, what are their needs, what are their expectations, how they are in fights, what happened to them when they are fighting, what happened to them when they do not get what they want, what is their work style, are their, emotional needs, and mainly feel, be aware to the sense of how you feel when you talk with them. Do you feel accepted? Do you feel heard? Do you feel that it's an open space to really talk? Or there is immediately a unspoken hierarchy or triggers that you should be aware of? The second is tied to the founder agreement, which is basically financial legal one. You need to create a psychological contract. And I'm helping many founders to build it first. And also to know that the psychological contract is something that is changing. It's dynamic. because when one of them, of the founder, they can get a loan and everything will be great. But when the CEO typically needs to move to the relocation, to have a relocation in their, in the US or other country, something breaks in the contract because they are not sitting one next to the other and they need to realign their psychological contract. What are the expectations, what they need from each other, how they're going to communicate, how they're going to solve conflicts and problems when they are far away and there is, maybe 10 hours distance between them. Secondly, when someone is getting married and having a baby, it's changing the dynamic. So the psychological contract is a very important thing that you need to look at and review from time to time. I would ask also to define from the beginning how they're going to make decisions and what happens when they do not agree. What is the way to resolve it? I won't be able to elaborate now, but there are several tactics and strategies how to handle it and what are the roles and responsibilities. So to talk about it. Next week, I expect you to do that. I expect me to do this and that. So it will be clear. And I suggest that every week or two, you will have a common session where you talk about your relationship, not business, not technology, but what's happened between us. We are 2 people, 3 people, 4 people, and how we give feedback to each other. So let's talk about what's happening and not let this big elephant growing between us. And then it's bringing us, we are getting far away from each other and it's not a good sign. And of course, to get support, to get help. Every person that is a marathonist or an expert in sport, they are taking someone to help them because they understand that if they want to run the marathon or the Ironman, it's not enough to build the concrete muscle. You need also to build mental and emotional muscle that will help you with this resiliency. And founders that are successful in self and relational awareness, resilience, and growth mindset are those that can really run this marathon for long term. So you can have, someone to work with you and help you to solve what's happening between you and your co-founder. So I think that there are several signs before they come to me. Okay, many of I can tell you that in my portfolio, it's half and half of them understood from the beginning that it's not going to be easy and we need someone to help us as we grow, because every stage is bringing every stage in the startup life, post-round, relocation, changes will impact our relationship. And I'm working with them for 5-6 years already. Okay, so we started when they were 12 people and now there are 200 or more, because they have this awareness and understanding and they embrace the opportunity. Others come when there is a crisis, when they cannot talk, when they fight, when they disagree all the time, where the startup is in stagnation, they cannot make joint decision, or they are not aligned in their direction and communication and decisions, so they confuse their management team, their employee, and the worst is when it's starting to influence the culture. It started to influence the collaboration between the different disciplines, the sale, the R&D and product, this triangle that everyone talks about. Most of the time when there is, continuous tension, it's starting from the co-founder relationship. So I think that what will make them successful is to really look for this sign and not letting the miscommunication and the anger or the frustration to manage them, to stop and decide that they need to understand the root cause and improve their communication. So this is what I will. And also, as I talked before about the psychological contract. So once something is changing, relocation, newborn, moving to something that is really changing the reality, you should sit and talk about the psychological content.
And I'm curious, based on your research, I think, and work with, I think, over 400 different founders, were there any surprising findings around emotional health and resilience within that startup ecosystem? And any patterns or trends there?
I think that research dealt with two themes. One is the co-founder relationship, and secondly is the emotional health of the founder. And it's different between if you're a CEO and non-CEO, because CEO has even more complexities and burden on their shoulder that they need to handle. I will say that on the co-founder theme, what surprised me was to see that number one, and I can send you later so you can publish, the result, the data for my research. The number one cause for co-founder tension and conflict is the organizational hierarchy. So at the beginning, they start as 2, 3, 4 people together. They're equal. And the recommendation is usually also to split the equity in an equal way. And sometimes they start from friends, from school, or we didn't talk about family-based startup, married couple or brother and sister, siblings. So I will put it aside because this is a different podcast by itself, how to manage a family-based startup. So they start together and they're doing everything together. They are cleaning the toilets together. They are thinking, they are doing, and suddenly when the startup grow and there are 15, 20, 30 people, suddenly there is organizational hierarchy. And this person, one of them is the CEO, the second is the CTO, the third is the CPO. And there is a hierarchy because the CEO has a different role than the other. And many founding teams find it difficult to coexist, to manage the coexistence of the organizational hierarchy side to the equal partnership. It's not easy. There is a tension, inherent tension in that, because it's not this or that. You need to hold the two sides of the continuum. You need to manage this partnership, which is equal, and you feel that we are shoulder to shoulder. And at the same time, there is one person that is a CEO, and in the eyes of the investor and in the eye of the organization, he is the leader. So it's not easy. And you can see demonstrating in many areas, and many founders came to me with this reason. So after doing my research, I validate my work in the clinic. So I can say that this was the most surprise to me, that this is the reason.
Another big standout for me was one of the stats that I saw before you came on the podcast was 70% of your portfolio completed their next funding round. So I've got to ask, what psychological factors do you believe might contribute to this success rate? Because it's a phenomenally high figure, isn't it?
It is. It is. I think that it's thanks to people, and this is what I'm pitching and I'm saying all the time. And I feel as a thought leader that it's something that if we want to really build healthy and thriving ecosystem in Israel, in England, in everywhere, we need to bring this to the founders' awareness, that it's not only about the business. They are the anchor, and it starts and ends with them. It starts and ends with, their way of thinking and their biases and who they are as a person and how they develop themselves. I say that high growth startup require high growth founders. So founders that embrace the opportunity and understood that it's about them, they are the anchor, and they develop themselves and they develop self-awareness, and they really work hard about the relationship with the co-founder and on themselves, were those that really succeeded because they didn't wait for the crisis to come. They understand that each phase requires different muscles sometimes, different skill set, and they were able and understood that they need to develop it. Also, they learn and to talk about stuff. personal and interpersonal. They learn that it's not, you don't need to feel guilty or shame to talk about it. And when you open up and you share your vulnerability, this is actually your strength because you built upon that. And they learn how to face failure on the way, because founders that build resiliency and agree to be in the process of learning and unlearning are those that are able to fail or emotionally and, business-wise. They are handling it in a better way than someone that when they face a failure on the way and it's crushed them and they don't know how to react to that or to manage it. I've learned that all mature in age founders are successful more than the young one. And there are more and more research showing it because they have more resilience. They went through, all kinds of experiences in life, and their maturity helped them. They have kids, so they know what it means to be in a place where there is high uncertainty, stress, and anxiety, and they learn and they have the willingness. I think this is the most important one. They have the willingness to learn and to improve themselves and develop themselves. So, yeah, I think this is it.
Yeah, and as we record the podcast today, it is World Mental Health Day. It won't go out for a couple of weeks, but that's when we're recording this. So I've got to ask, how does the startup environment differ from, let's say, traditional corporate settings? Are there any unique stresses or opportunities for emotional growth in this area?
I think that it's, as I mentioned before, it's like your baby.
Yeah.
And it's very fragile, and something can happen to it. The baby, and the startup can be closed in a minute. Every time, every moment, you feel like, okay, this is the end. It's going to die. And this is why it's put you in a very stressful mode, and you feel in a survival. You need to survive, and you need to survive, and your startup needs to survive, because only 1 out of 10 or 11 startups becoming everlasting, and they get to the end point. So by itself, this is a completely different than being employed by a corporate. As I mentioned before, there are many personal contributors from your childhood and from, the pattern that you have developed through your life to how you manage this survival mode. But the whole startup life, like sometimes other very difficult situations in life, okay, are triggering you. Like couple that try to have a baby and they do not succeed. This is a very stressful situation. Or other occasion, in life where it's a survival mode. So I think startup put you in the same place. And you're not, employed by a big company. This is on your shoulder. It's about you, and you are in the front. It's about your brand. So, and as I mentioned, when there is no separation between yourself to the startup, when it's very much the same, and you don't find a way to distinguish your self-esteem as a person, as a human being, as a father, as a husband, as a mother from the startup and what's happening in the startup, it will be very difficult. And it's not happening in the corporate life. You don't feel so attached, and so that all the burden is on your shoulder.
And you mentioned the burden being on the shoulder there, and another huge topic right now is founder burnout. So there will be a lot of startup founders listening. Maybe they flirted with burnout in the past. Maybe they just try and power through and don't even realize they're suffering from burnout. So what are the early signs of burnout, and are there any preventative strategies that you would recommend?
I want to say something before that many of the VCs and experts that are handling and trying to support the mental health of founders are focusing on the well-being. They are focusing on the sleeping routine, eating, exercising, breathing, meditation or any other exercise. And I think that there is another level beyond that, and which is more, that is really touching the psychological factor. And how I will see that one of my founders in the portfolio, my clinic, is in burnout, I will see someone that is suffering from a very deep fatigue. It's not tiredness. It's this deep fatigue in your soul and in your muscle, where even if you will sleep 2 days, it won't disappear. Okay, so this is one. Some of them will lose weight or gain weight or have all kinds of stomach disease, Crohn, etc. They will have breathing difficulties. Okay, so I will see some of also the physical aspects. I will be able to observe the loss of sense of control. So I'm running after my tail and I cannot handle everything and I'm losing control. And no matter what I'm doing, I am not in control. And this is a very difficult feeling. They will have an increased self-doubts about themselves. They will be very much self-critic. Their self-esteem will be diminished, so they won't believe in themselves that they can overcome difficulties. They won't believe in themselves that they can finish tasks. They won't believe in their ability to really handle. And I see it many times when you need to raise, when they're in the middle of the funding round, and especially in today's reality where it's so difficult, they need to build up their self-esteem. And when they're in burnout, it's more difficult. And last and not least is the cynicism about the surrounding. So you will find them have a critical or cynicism about what's happening around them. So this will be the signal, and it's not a cognitive. Sometimes it's a cognitive discussion. Many times it's emotional and even physical. I will ask them, what do you feel in your body? What's happening? So, and sometimes I will need to send them to, the conventional doctor to give them any medicine, and I can diagnose that. And sometimes it's what they need, because again, the tendency for depression and anxiety among the founders' population is very high. And we saw many research coming from London, the ecosystem where you live in, and from Israel and all around. So these are the signals. Now you ask what I will do with it, how I will try to help.
Yeah.
So there are several dimensions. It's a systemic kind of support. It's not one thing or two things. It's how to surround themselves in the support system. So we will start with the physical elements, okay? The sleeping, the eating, the routines, how they take break, how they breathe, how they really embed in their day routine where they can take care of themselves and can really rest in the way that they find that they love. Secondly, it's all about surround yourself with people you love and have quality time with people that you care and they care for you. To enjoy stuff, so it can be music, it can be go to the movie. So I will help them to build the schedule of the week where we embed this stuff, because we know that being surrounded with people you love and do things that you like and love and enjoy are super important. And also talk with people. I am also having a founder group where they can really share. So they come and they meet other founders that struggle with the same, and they don't feel this guilt anymore. Why it happened to me? Suddenly they understand it's normal. I normalize it. And when they talk about it, it's not a secret anymore, because secrets are the most dangerous stuff, because it's eating you from the inside. And then on the personal level, we will identify their trigger and how they can reframe their thoughts and feeling when the trigger happen, when someone saying something to me and I feel like he disrespect me or she made me feel small. So how we take this trigger and they can really reframe it and regulate their emotion. So the emotion and thoughts won't come immediately, automatically sometimes. I will help them to bring back their focus and control. We will understand in the startup life and in overall life, where is the central cycle of control and influence that they have. So they will feel more empowered that they have it, they can handle it. I will help with building the self-esteem and separate who they are and who they perceive they are from the success or failure or the struggle they had in the startup. I will help them to identify anchors because I know the startup life and what's happened. I'm a psychologist that's expert in the startup. So I will help them to identify anchor within their leadership team, within their organization, and how they can get support from these people, how they can prioritize, how can they really understand what are their focuses at the moment, how they are handling their investors. So we will do things like that. So it's emotional, physical, relational, and organizational or more mission-based stuff. So you see how it's a very holistic framework. And thanks to my research, I developed many frameworks and models and intervention tools that can really help. So, for example, imagine founders that just completed a round. For my research, I have the list of the common growing pain. So they know what's going to happen and they can manage it in advance and it's not a surprise. Okay, so these are the things that I will do. And again, it's customized, it's personalized. Because what causes you stress or burnout, it's not what causing me. We are different. We come from a different childhood. We have our different trigger. This is why it's not a checklist. It's very much customized based on the assessment and analysis and the work together.
And I also wanted to highlight that you're someone that often works within the Israeli startup ecosystem, often regarded as a hub of innovation, aka Startup Nation, of course. So how does that cultural aspect influence founder psychology, if at all?
Well, I think I'm so happy you asked this question because I don't know how many people know that Israel currently is in the middle of a very severe war. And the Israeli nation needed to protect, we needed to protect ourselves. And many of our founders grew in the military service, the knowledge and the skill, the leadership skills, the innovation, the technological innovation or other types of innovation, the resiliency, their determination. So it's Karl Popper, from the group psychoanalysis, gave it a title which is the social unconscious. Every nation has its own unconscious, social unconscious. So it means that deep in our roots, our history transformed to us. So this sense of urgency and survival, and we will achieve our goal, and we will do everything, and we will fight. So this is the strength. Also based on that, the technological expertise that we have in the Israel is very developed. And this helped, the cyber system, the AI now. So it's all growing together. Unfortunately, it means sometimes that it's a very masculine ecosystem. And I think it's the same everywhere. It's not different. The minority of female that are actually running startups. But again, this is a different topic. And many people my patient and founders in the Israeli ecosystem now are fighting in the war. And they cannot manage their startup. So it's not something that happens all the time, but it's happened again. And I think that many of our strength and power, inner strength and resiliency came from that.
Before I let you go, as a well-respected thought leader in this space, I've got to ask, for everybody listening, what is that one piece of psychological advice that you believe would be crucial but often overlooked by founders and CEOs? What would that takeaway piece of advice be?
I would say the startup is an episode in your life. It's about growing yourself. It's about developing yourself. And think about how you want to get out of it. And take it as an opportunity, a very stretched opportunity to grow yourself, to achieve, who you want to be. It's not only about the present. There is a lot about the future. And the second is to remember that it's all about you. You are the anchor. Your strength, your ability, will is your thoughts is linked, to your performance. So you need to take care of yourself. Like in the airplane, the mother first put the mask on herself before she put it on her kids. Same here. You need to take care of yourself so then you can become a better leader, and a founder.
Well, absolutely love chatting with you today, and I can't thank you enough for taking the time to sit down with me, share your expertise, share your insights. But again, before I let you go, I'm going to ask you to leave everyone listening with one final gift, and that is we have a Spotify playlist where I ask my guests to leave a song that means something to them, and we also have an Amazon wish list for books that my guests like to recommend to listening. All I'm going to ask is, what would you like to leave everyone listening with today and why?
This is an amazing thing. Me and my husband, his name is Ethan, and by the way, I have 3 kids and 1 dog. Yeah. We love Sting, adore him, and we love Sting and Shaggy. And one of the biggest songs in their album was Morning is Coming. And I would love everyone to listen to it because it's all about, it's a revelation day and how you make every day something that you learn, you grow from, and you can enjoy the moment, enjoy the process.
Oh, man, what a beautiful choice there. I will get that added straight to that Spotify playlist. I'm going to check that out myself as I finish our recording today. And for anyone listening, wanting to find out more information about you, how you might be able to help them or their startup, what's the best starting point? Where would you like to point everyone listening?
I didn't quite understand the question. Can you?
Yeah, sure. It's just about your website and where people can get hold of you. So where would you like to point everyone listening to find out more information about you?
So YaelDaniely.com is my website, and I have my LinkedIn, Yael Daniely, startup and co-founder psychologist. I would love to connect. I would love to work with people who really understand that if they want to succeed, if they want to build a hyper-growth startup, they need to be high growth.
Well, I'll add links to all of those things so people can find you nice and easily. I just loved hearing more about your story as a startup psychologist and co-founders therapist, and how you've established this clinic supporting founders, in fact, supporting hundreds of founders all across the world. Inspirational. I'd love to stay in touch with you. As you said a few moments in the podcast there were other topics that we kind of flirted with, but they were separate podcasts on their own. And one of them in particular that really caught my attention was about the lack of female startups or female-led startups. So I'd love to get you back on next year, maybe explore that in a little bit more detail. But more than anything, thank you for joining me today.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Neil. Have a good day.
Wow. What an incredible discussion that was. And I just loved unearthing the psychological dimensions that founders often are guilty of overlooking, but how they are crucial for long-term success, from understanding your co-founder's personal relational resumes to cultivating emotional health and resilience. She's pointed out that these soft aspects are often as critical in any business strategy in the startup journey than the other obvious areas. And I think an also unique point to ponder is how the startup environment, despite the glamour and allure that does come with its own unique set of stresses, challenges that can lead to burnout if you don't manage it effectively. But it's not just about identifying these stretches. As today's guest emphasised, it's a holistic approach that transcends traditional business coaching. But for any startup founders or business leaders listening, I'd love to hear your opinions, your insights on the more psychological aspects in the tech startup world. So if you've got anything you want to share, email me, techblogwriter@outlook.com. Connect with me on LinkedIn, just at Neil C. Hughes, if you want to send me a message there. But I'd love to hear more about your side of this story too. So that's it for today though. So thank you for listening as always. And until next time, don't be a stranger.